these books aren't banned. They're here. I see them. You're confusing the language.
We've lived up to the title to Ramble.
While we're talking about Harry Potter, I feel like porn and Harry Potter just makes sense to kind of segue.
Oh, yeah. They're basically the same.
Right.
Welcome, everyone, to Around Podcast. My name is Richard.
My name is Austin.
Today, as you may see, we got a new set. We moved. So this is now my apartment's library.
It's
which
no
is
longer
cool.
our set.
No longer.
It's Rich
mine.
made this whole set, and I gotta say, not to give Rich confidence or support, but it looks great. If you're audio only right now, you're missing out. Just give it a little shot on YouTube because you put some work into this thing.
To be fair, it's a bunch of IKEA bookshelves painted, but
it looks
you know
great.
what?
Don't give yourself some credit. You deserve this win.
I had high aspirations and then had to tamper them, but I'm very happy with it so far. And today is a very special episode because not only are we having a guest on, we're also doing a new thing.
What's that?
Where, you know how we normally forget to plug our stuff and wait till the end?
Except the Patreon. We always remember to plug the Patreon.
Yeah. This time, I'm actually going to say, go buy our merch. Democracy is cringe hoodie, stuff like that. It's fun. Plug in the beginning and then we're done. So we don't forget.
We can now move on.
Now we have Thomas. Thanks for joining us.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
Thomas, you know your order. It went, let's talk about our set, then our merch, then let's introduce the guest.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Just because we feel a little more comfortable because we were on Thomas's channel, Thomas Writes. Fantastic having us on. We had an awesome conversation and we talked about theology, C.S. Lewis, and just you're a Christian coming from a Christian point of view and having us on. We were talking about, and all behind you, people can see a bunch of theology books. Is that right?
That's right, yes, and to be perfectly clear, this is just the library we have here at my workplace. I have not read all of these books. These are more for reference. But yes, my background is in studying theology. I got my Master's of Divinity from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary just back in May, and very excited to be here to talk about how theology and fiction go a lot more hand in hand than I think people give it credit for.
Fantastic. Well, if people have read the title of this video, a big central topic, and we'll go off topic as we normally do for videos, but to start it off, I was thinking you would be a great person to talk to about the controversy that used to be, maybe a decade ago.
Eons.
Yeah, eons ago. The battle and war between Christians and Harry Potter. Because I remember as a kid, that was a big deal going on. Christians doing book burnings of Harry Potter, trying to ban it from schools. I know personally, like one of my best friends from elementary school, his mother would not allow him to read Harry Potter. And so it was an interesting point of view. I am curious to ask why that is. Why was Harry Potter such a target? Should it have been? Your thoughts?
Yes. Well, I had a very similar experience to you, Rich. I remember, because I went to a private Christian school when I was a kid, and I remember a lot of parents having a lot of similar concerns. I know it was a big point of controversy, even in my school, just because a lot of people in my class were big Harry Potter fans, and certain people in the administration were a little more iffy on it. As to why Harry Potter in particular, I think it comes down to a couple of things. One, whenever something is incredibly popular and is especially popular with kids, I think people, and especially Christian parents, get more concerned about it because, they may not be familiar with all these like niche different fantasy things, but let's not forget that Harry Potter was the talk of the town. It was the book series that everyone was talking about. Even people who don't normally read Harry Potter. And so I think the fact that it was so big made it a certain targeting point. And then, of course, the other one being a lot of people had concerns about the fact that it openly said, Hogwarts School of Wizardry and Witchcraft. And I think it's the use of the word witchcraft in particular that really made people get antsy, because the Bible uses the term witchcraft. However, I would argue that if you look at Harry Potter versus what the Bible says on, their definitions of witchcraft, I think there are some pretty big differences there that I'm sure we'll get into. But that's to answer your initial question there.
Well, as a good follow-up, how do Christians, and I know there's several denominations, so I know it's different, but generally, what do Christians view witchcraft as? Or another word for the occult. What is it to Christians?
So, generally speaking, I would define the occult as anything that is specifically targeted to oppose Christianity from a spiritual warfare standpoint. Because broadly speaking, the word occult is used a lot in our pop culture, just I think typically to mean like evil things in general. But if you actually look, I forget what the root word of occult means, but the root word of occult, it actually is referring to the opposite of a religion. So to kind of define some terms here, let's take Christianity as an example. You've got the mainstay denominations and sects of Christianity. Then you have Christian cults. And now a cult is considered something that takes an element from a religion, but kind of spins it off into its own thing. An occult is a religion that is formed specifically for the purpose of opposing another religion. And so that's what makes Satanism different from all these other things, is it was specifically formed to oppose Christianity versus, to just say, all these other things are satanic. No, satanic specifically is referring to something that was made for the purpose of either ticking off or trying to get under Christian skin.
Now, to take the evangelical Christian, to take the Bible thumper side, I was reading some articles on the ideas behind Harry Potter and what makes it different from other fantasy things. Is that specifically the magic in Harry Potter is stuff that can be referenced today in real life. There's the star sign stuff, the numerology. There's a couple different references of like actual quote unquote witchcraft.
I can quote the person for you as well.
Thank you.
This is evangelical journalist Richard Baines, and this is what he said about Harry Potter, why this is different. So he said, one of the easiest ways to know whether a fantasy book or film has real-world magic in it is just ask a simple question. Can my child find information in a library or bookstore that will enable them to replicate what they're seeing in the film or the book? If you go to the Chronicles of Narnia and the Lord of the Rings, what you see in there, story, magic, and imagination is not real. You can't replicate it. But if you go to something like Harry Potter, you can find references to astrology, clairvoyance, and numerology. It takes seconds to go into a bookstore or library and get books on that and start investigating, researching it, and doing it. So that's what the hard Bible thumper, as you say, is saying, that Harry Potter is different than Lord of the Rings in that way. What do you think on all that, Thomas?
Yeah, I think in my cursory research that I did before we jumped on, I saw that same quote, and I'm glad you guys had it referenced specifically. Personally, I think I should start off by saying this whole realm falls into the area of personal conviction. Christians especially, unfortunately, can get very riled up about what media you can and cannot consume. But at the end of the day, that really comes down to personal conviction as to whether or not you think that is something that will be beneficial to you or not. And there's actually one Bible verse I wanted to quote for you guys that I think specifically references this question in general.
Great. Let's hear it.
All right. So it's in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. I'm going to go ahead and turn there in my copy, and you are welcome to do so if you've got one there.
I don't think I'm quick enough to find it, but
I'll give you a sec. No worries.
all right. If I get to the book of Job, did I go too far?
If you get to the book of Job, you need to go much farther, actually.
I'm at the wisdom of Solomon, the Acts of the Apostles, the letters of Paul.
It's saying something about Eve. Don't do it. Don't do it. Oh, no, she did it.
Yep. So it's going to be right after Ephesians in the New Testament.
Oh, Lord. You know, how about you just read it
just
off?
Thomas,
This is gonna take too
oh,
long.
man.
No problem. We can do the. I can sing you guys the books of the Bible song I learned when I was in Awana Club. Not really, but
I also remember there being a song. I don't remember the word.
All right, let me go ahead and read it for you. So it's in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. It says, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any moral excellence, and if there is anything praiseworthy, dwell on these things." And so that's the verse that I have typically turned to as a litmus test for whether I should consume a piece of media or not. Is it morally sound? Is there a message there that I can latch onto? And so to draw that back to the original statement, I'm sorry, I forget the author's name, but the guy who was talking about that Harry Potter references real world magic practices. Personally, for me, my personal conviction, I don't think a child can learn how to practice magic from Harry Potter. I think there may be some crossover in terms of the generalities of like astrology and numerology, but if a child points at you and says Avada Kedavra, you are not going to keel over dead. So so personally for me, I think the ties are still loose enough to where it doesn't make me uncomfortable. However, I would respect someone and can definitely see that argument for why it would make them uncomfortable.
And I think we are making this video topic when I'm saying Christians versus Harry Potter. Let's note, this is a very, very small section of Christians who are against Harry Potter. There was a poll done. It said, "Oh, go ahead, Rich."
I don't think it used to be a lot larger. Nowadays,
today it's
very small. I think, but at the time, the fractional part was, hey, like a lot of Christians were kind of going along to get along. It was widely condemned by multiple different churches. And the loud people saying, "Oh, that's evil," it's encouraging the occult, and there's the morality aspect of, hey, it's teaching Harry and teaching kids to, not respect your elders, to find your own
I saw that
path.
one too. I thought that was interesting.
So yeah, there's those things, and then I think the moderates were kind of going like, hey, maybe it's not great for 5-year-olds, but if they're 12. Let them go ahead.
You already know some Christian read this one like, "Ooh, that's a pretty fun book. I like it." But that's the thing with it was called the Overton window as well. When I think since Harry Potter was published, society in general has gotten like Harry Potter's milquetoast compared to things that you could. I think a Christian would be more outraged by other things today. I'm guessing for Thomas. Can I fill those words in your mouth? Like there's other things to be concerned about other than Harry Potter.
A Christian would probably not want to show their 5-year-old The Boys. That's probably not the best TV show for them. It's
not. It is a fantastic show.
Season 1's a fantastic show.
We got to continue that though. But but exactly that. Well, there are shows and there's books made for kids and adults, whereas Harry Potter is made for kids, at least book 1 to, boys is just X-rated, R-rated something. But when you have, I'm guessing here, like Harry Potter's very milquetoast in the whole grand scheme of things. But when we're looking at people who can judge J.K. Rowling or any author. I mean, J.K. Rowling has we can discuss everything about J.K. Rowling as well in this episode, but go on how the author, she's also self-described not Catholic, Christian, I believe, self-described Christian, and she has, when she was writing Harry Potter, she says she didn't have any witchcraft in mind, but we can also talk about the grander theme here of authors, whatever their faith is, whatever their experiences are, have their own biases when they're writing a story. And let's say J.K. Rowling was trying to do witchcraft, and that was her whole conniving scheme to get all these kids and infiltrate and cause evil across the world. But the thing that is always true is authors, you can never really block yourself off from getting through your point of view and your message. Yeah. And so when I can understand why parents, when they're getting their kids to consume media, why you'd be concerned about, oh, you should probably not consume The Boys, which is XR rated. That's for the boys. That's for an older audience. But then you can go to your kid. Like there has to be certain restrictions you make for your children. Now the step beyond when it came to Harry Potter and Christians was, oh, then do you go to step up of censorship? Do you go the step up of book burnings and all this? It's, do you start affecting the grander community or your children? So I'm gonna go 3 different angles here. And Thomas, which one interests you the most out of all of those that you want to dive into and you just want to just scramble up right now?
I mean, yeah, that's definitely a lot to unpack. I'll start off with the first one, which is talking about how J.K. Rowling identifies as a Christian.
Yeah.
And that's something I think why Harry Potter doesn't bug me is because the inciting incident, spoilers, by the way, but I think everybody already knows this, but the inciting incident for Harry Potter is the fact that Voldemort tries to kill him, and yet it is his mother's love that protects him. And that becomes a major theme throughout the whole series, is that love is the most powerful magic. Now, of course, when you say it that way, it can come across as very cheesy. But to me, that message of love conquering evil and that very pure love, not, kind of lovey-dovey, oh, I'm so in love, but no, a mother's love for her child, this very pure, innocent thing conquering evil. I mean, to me, that's straight biblical right there. I mean, that's the whole message of Christianity is, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son so that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. And so that same idea of a parent's love being this unimaginably powerful force. Again, I just never got the level of rage. And to kind of head to your next thing of with book burning and all of that, to me, it's one thing my conviction. If a piece of media is offensive to me, I just don't watch it. I just don't watch it. I don't tell my friends to go watch it. I just move on with my life. I think when you're a Christian and you take this active stance of like, I've got to go make sure to destroy this piece of media because it's offensive to me, I think it just gives the church such a bad look when you take that route. It's like, guys, we live in a free country. And if something is offensive to you, you don't have to engage with it. No one's saying you have to. And if you do like it, feel free to consume it. But this idea that, and we see it, of course, on social media all the time, this idea that if something is offensive to me, it's not enough that I don't watch it. I have to do everything in my power to either tear down the creator, tear down the fan base, tear down the property itself. And I think that's just a very unhelpful attitude of criticism to have, especially in our current landscape.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, it has kind of the Barbara Streisand effect of, you start going up in arms about a piece of media, you make it forbidden. Like, now people are going to pay attention to it. Now, to that point, I actually wanted to touch in a little bit more nuanced of overall book banning and book burning. Like, I think most people disagree with that. I think even most Christians, when they're like, there's like, oh yeah, I don't want to ban it from Barnes and Noble, but what about schools? Because there is that difference of parents going like, hey, I don't want that book. I don't want Harry Potter at my kid's school. I want that removed, or name a book. Pick one. And like, hey, I don't think it's appropriate because I banned it in my home, but they go to school,
Right?
And they can pick it up there,
Right. Like if
I
they
don't want
start
them to-
banning Red Rising from schools, I'm joining Satan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm pretty much on his side. I'm the occult now, right? Is that did I use the term properly, Thomas? Like,
I'm
okay.
against.
I mean,
organizing against.
the title
just-
is Red Rising. You could have that as a possible subtle satanic message.
Ah,
Red
Ah.
shoot,
Rising.
Pierce might be trying to infiltrate children. Oh no! Just as an asterisk, hey, zoom in, Nick. Zoom on my face. That was a joke.
Not a Satanist.
Not a Satanist. Okay. All right. Let's go. Continue on. Yes, that was a very new. I like that nuanced point of book burnings, and then what happens when it comes to school.
They're often lumped together. I hear kind of the silly conversations having people like, book burning's wrong. Like, yeah, agree. And there's like, hey, the school's not this school banned Playboy from their magazines. Like, they banned a book from the school library, but like, that's not the same thing as like when people
I
talk.
would agree,
because I've walked into some bookstores and it bothers me a little bit of seeing the banned book items in the Barnes and Noble, and it's like, these books aren't banned. They're here. I see them. You're confusing the language of book banning.
What they mean is that like a certain area like didn't allow it in a school or something like that.
Like, there are books that are appropriate for high schoolers that aren't appropriate for elementary schoolers. Like,
exactly.
I don't know if I don't particularly know if you should have, even Huckleberry Finn in an elementary school library. Maybe it's like, let them wait. Let them wait till middle school. I don't know. That kind of, so I see that stuff and it's irksome to me of just be clear. But what are your thoughts on that, especially when tying into Harry Potter? Were Christians justified in a way of saying, hey, I don't want Harry Potter at my kid's middle school or elementary school?
Right. I mean, generally, I would say that I'm on the same page as you, where I do think there needs to be a clear definition between the difference of book burning versus, not wanting this in a library. I mean, and at the end of the day, to me, it depends on what it is. Like with something like Harry Potter, and again, maybe hindsight is 2020 here, kind of what you were talking about, Austin, where it's like Harry Potter in retrospect is so mild compared to all the other kinds of stuff you could be engaging with as a kid.
Try reading the Harry Potter fanfics now.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean,
oh, yeah.
Thomas is laughing because he's read them, I think. Look at that's a face of a man who's done some deep dives. That's... But sorry to interrupt your point. You're just saying that there's
now zoom on my face. That was a joke. But going off of what you guys were saying, like, Harry Potter, I think very mild. It's so inoffensive to me personally. But let's make a distinction between, because here's the example I'll go with. I didn't read 1984 until I was in high school. And I think that was a good thing, because there is some really dark, messed up stuff in there that I think would be too much for a kid. And I mean, good grief. Let's take a step back for a second. With movies, we still don't let kids go into an R-rated film unless their parents are with them. We still don't let children buy M-rated games unless they have their parents there to approve it. So to have a similar mentality to books, I don't think should be that offensive to people. Now, I'm not saying we need to have something equivalent to the ESRB or the MPAA for books, but this idea that just because you don't like the idea that your kids can read anything and everything, that you're a bad person for that, I would be more concerned of a parent who just kind of lets their kids read or watch whatever and has no issue with whatever they want to consume personally.
Oh, yeah, especially at more younger ages. Like, everyone kind of remembers when they were like 5 to 8 or whatever, where you watch a thing and then for the next week, that's your personality. Like, you just start copying it.
Me. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's literally me. Like, I remember when I watched Pirates of the Caribbean. as a kid.
Oh yeah.
I was
Dun 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 dun.
I was running around pretending I was Captain Jack Sparrow for like a week.
Yep.
It was great. I could just imagine if I was watching something else at that time when I was
Can I
highly
go darker
impressionable.
on that? So this brings up a whole conversation about pornography, where we are in the internet age beyond books, where we're experimenting in this new world of where there's this unfiltered access. Hey, if kids are at least given access, even if the parent doesn't give access, they're going to find access. You can only restrict so much. But we're in this first kind of generation. No, there's been porn before, but where pornography and looking up on the internet is so easy to do. And not to speak for myself, but Rich, you can join in here. Thomas, share whatever you'd like. Sorry that we're getting more like
No, this is
topical on
totally
this.
fine.
Yeah,
I think it's a real conversation that needs
Definitely.
to be had. So go right ahead.
but I think I first watched. I must have been like 12 years old when I just first saw something on the internet, and then went through this cycle of watching pornography. I've quit since then, but that's after like a decade of watching pornography and the impact that can have on a child's mind. And a very impressionable child. And then it can we can go down the list of what pornography could do to a teenage, a tweens, and even an adult's brain. But just while we're talking about Harry Potter, I feel like porn and Harry Potter just makes sense to kind of segue.
Oh yeah, they're basically the same.
Right. But Rich, I know you have a lot of thoughts on that too, but just talking about how it's something that you can't really censor. It's something that will always be there. But I just kind of wanted to pivot into that conversation.
I'm on the camp of ban it all. It should. It's a sickness and it's not good for anybody. And the main thing is I know how much it affects the brain. It's not such an innocent thing. It is like many others. It can be an addiction. And
It is, yeah.
Take my side of it out where I'm like, ban it all. Fine, let's make that a little less extreme. Of course, should really try to actually restrict it from children. Even just try the bare minimum effort. Like even Europe has different like age verification laws for porn, and so
again, it's
no
very easy to circumnavigate that.
There's
but
also no constitutional protection for pornography. That's not a thing. Like it's not like it's a magical protection. Like, oh, that's freedom of speech. No, there's obscenity laws. Like you could ban it if we wanted to. It's not a.
Do you think it's possible to ban it though? Like
It's legally possible.
No, in practice, like practically speaking.
Oh, probably not. No.
It's just something that you wish could just be erased.
Though, to be fair, I think you could play both sides of the political aisle in a very interesting way to get the same result.
Probably could.
Oh no, you could play to the fundamentalist Christian right pretty easily. Hey, porn's a sin, evil, ban it. Easy, got it. But then you take on the liberal left. You start going like, hey, this is really sexist. It's men, predominantly men. Women do watch porn too, but like, hey, you're feeding into the male gaze and the sexist view, and it warps men's minds to view women as objects. Ban it. I think you could argue at both sides.
Thomas?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you. I think in a perfect world you would be able to ban it and just completely erase it. The fact of the matter, though, is that, that as a Christian, I believe the human heart is inherently corrupt and will find ways to indulge its desires no matter what laws or whatever bans are in place. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't, that just throw the floodgates open. But a couple notes I wanted to say on that is something that was very shocking to me recently was, I don't know if you saw on X in May, or Twitter, whatever. I don't care what you call it, but on X.
They're never getting rid of the Twitter name.
They're never.
Ironic it's named X now. After we're talking about porn, like X-rated.
Yes, this is going to tie into what I'm about to say. Exactly,
I just gotta always interrupt. I'm sorry, Thomas, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. In May, they changed their rules on pornography to where now it is what they're saying they're going to do is they're going to put it in its own specific like 18 plus section on Twitter, so you can only access it if you're verified of that age and if you actively seek it out. But what I found very interesting and to me very tragic about that statement is if you read the policy change, they literally use the words, porn is a legitimate expression of art. And to me, that just flies in the face, of course, of everything I believe in. But just, again, take Christianity out of it. In general, could you honestly watch porn and say, yeah, that's a legitimate expression of art? Like, that is trying to be a genuine expression of the human soul. No, its only purpose is to make people aroused. That is literally its only purpose. It has no artistic merit beyond that. And to tie into what you were saying, Rich, about the Supreme Court and how the Supreme Court has handled pornography in the past, I mean, that's where that very infamous saying came from, was when, I forget the name of the specific case, but they were talking about obscenity laws, and they were asking the judges, okay, define what obscenity is, define what porn is. And the judge very infamously said, well, you know it when you see it.
I think that was Justice Scalia, was it?
It may have been. It may have been Scalia. But yeah, they just left it at that. The highest court in the nation. Well, you know it when you see it. What kind of definition is that? How are you going to regulate it?
To be fair, honestly, it kind of makes sense to me. Because
it makes sense.
How else do you define it? Like, ultimately, it comes down to intent. Like, you can tell by the intent of, was this, so like the David or name a painting, like I think like the Trinity painting, or the painting of Aphrodite in the clamshell thing, like
the Venus de Milo, stuff like that.
Yeah, there's nudity with the purpose, like, he's clearly not trying to titillate the person. It's supposed to be an expression of the human form or showing the vulnerability. It's trying to do other things. And then there's other stuff where it's like, clearly this is just, it's supposed to arouse you. That's the point.
Yeah.
And that's porn. And that's really what it is. And that's how you can tell. Maybe there's stuff that kind of draws the line sometimes, but like, what was that recent movie that you saw that you really liked?
Oh, Poor Things.
Poor Things.
I love that movie.
Did that straddle the line between, like, because it was clear it's a movie that you really liked. That seems to be that it's more art, but apparently had a lot of nudity.
Tons of nudity.
So was that nudity supposed to be titillating, or is it supposed to show a side, like show the main character's vulnerability?
Definitely an artistic purpose. But yeah, this whole conversation about, so when we're talking about for kids and for when what parents want to introduce or not to their kids, every parent out there is going to go about it differently. Like, you could talk to your kid and actually prepare them, like, hey, you're probably going to watch porn at some point. Like, have that conversation with them. Maybe that's one way of going about it. Or, because again, I know if you're very strict with your kids and you restrict all access, they can also outburst and then rebel in another way as well. Sure. And obviously, if you're a good parent that they also look up to and respect, your kid will more likely also follow what you're going to say as well, if you can lead by example. So there's all sorts of good parenting tips to go about that. When it comes to this conversation about what, if it's good or bad for you, just the whole censorship, are you guys for or against the more, like when we're talking about book burning and the internet burning in this sense, are you guys for banning the act of something like that, or banning the production of something like that? Or when it comes to the book, please think about this as a book. If we're going to compare books and this as well, are you against somebody writing that book that does the thing you're against, or filming that porn that you're against, or against the consumption? What kind of end here in this conversation? Because I think it's a good example to use that's more hot button to kind of compare of like, oh, and when we're talking about banning for something, is this for everybody? Is this for adults and children? Especially, I want to hear, Thomas, from your Christian point of view on something like that, something that is definitely very not Christian as porn. And us as two agnostics who are very curious about religion, we can also give our insight on something like that too, because we're very weird with our opinions. We don't fit a box. It's we fit a triangle, and it's a really crooked one. So that's
a triangle of sadness, if you will.
I love that. Oh, I love that film. Oh wait, because we talked about it, Tom. Oh, that's right.
Yes,
I was like, how did he know that?
I still haven't watched it, but I couldn't help but reference that.
Oh, what a great reference. So, Thomas, what do you think about that? Because I'm talking about the banning for adults, for kids, something with using something as simple as Harry Potter, than an extreme of like porn.
Right. Yeah, with something. Let's start off with the milder one. Let's start off with Harry Potter. To me, I don't really see a good reason to ban something like Harry Potter, because I also thought of this. If your kids are reading Harry Potter, it means they're not reading Game of Thrones. It means they're not reading, the other stuff that's out there that is very extreme, that I would more take issue with. I would be much more comfortable, let's say if it was my kid. I don't have any kids, but I would be perfectly fine with, if my kids are reading Harry Potter all day instead of watching The Boys or Game of Thrones, then I'll be a happy parent. And I think I think a lot of Christians, frankly, need to take a similar stance, because another thing that bugs me personally about bugged me about the whole discussion about Harry Potter was, I worry that too many parents are scared to let their kids have some freedom in terms of what they pursue. Now, obviously, I believe that there should be boundaries of I don't want my kids watching something that is sexually explicit or filled with vulgarity when they're very young. But I mean, I do want them to be able to figure out, okay, are they into superheroes? Go for it. Are they into fantasy? Go for it. Are they into sci-fi? Go for it. Because I think that is why, unfortunately, a lot of kids, when they get to be 18 and they move out of their parents' house, they rebel and they get into all this really extreme stuff. It's because they were never allowed to really experiment or discover their own interests when they were younger. And I think if parents, it takes discernment, of course, and every household is different, but I think parents should allow some wiggle room for that realm with Harry Potter. Now, in the adult realm, the realm of porn and stuff like that, I do think there needs to be a hard line there for parents, regardless of what the Supreme Court says, regardless of what the laws may end up being. I do think there needs to be a hard line there for parents, because we just talked about it. It is addictive, and it is designed to be addictive. In fact, the United States alone produces 80% of the world's pornography. And
80%? Oh,
80%, God. Us, just on our own, we produce 80% of the world's porn. And frankly, I think that is reflected in just how sex obsessed our society is right now. It's very weird to me that people have yet to draw a correlation between all these increases in sexual crimes and the rampant increase in porn use. Now, obviously, I don't want to make it into a boogeyman situation where that's the only thing that could cause someone to go down that route, but I also don't think it's a
don't worry.
stretch
Let the funny guys make that point. Yeah, no, it's exactly. It's a direct correlation, 1-to-1. It's exactly the same.
But Thomas, on that point with you were making about. Rich, sorry to cut off the point. Yes, it is a 1-to-1.
It's a 1-to-1 correlation. There's
you.
nothing else that could be a reason.
But
it's this.
Yeah, Thomas, with that point of letting your kids be free and with some books to explore some things so they don't rebel later in life, could you see that argument from someone that's pro porn as well, going let your kid experiment more or in moderation, and so that they don't sexually rebel when they're adults or older, using that similar logic, because then maybe that repression could lead to bad results in the future. What do you think about that argument?
I could definitely see someone making that argument. However, my pushback would be is that, I don't know, we as cultures, I mean, porn as it exists today is a very new thing. People in ancient times, go read the old Greek plays and look at how sexually explicit they are. It's not like this is a new thing that, people are putting sex in their art. That's been with us since the dawn of time.
Welcome to the Greeks.
But and this is where I'll be controversial with other people, but because of my Christian worldview, the Bible speaks very clearly on sex being something that is sacred, on being something that should be protected and safeguarded, and it's something that I think parents need to do a better job of talking to their kids about, because our current culture has made it clear we're going to talk about sex 24/7, and we really don't care who hears about it. And so I think parents need to be more proactive in actually talking to their kids about, look, the whole birds and the bees. Here's the changes you're going through. This is what's going on. This is what this means, all of that. And I think being proactive in that helps a lot, because the danger with stuff like porn, of course, is that it is to me the ultimate zenith of objectification, where it just takes the opposite sex and it just completely turns them into a piece of meat and nothing else. And that's not the view of sex that I don't think anyone, Christian or non-Christian, wants their kids to have, that women are just there for your sake, or that men are just there for your sake. That I don't think anybody wants that that to be the case.
I want to ask Rich on this, and this is the only time I will ever ask you this question.
Oh no.
What do you think about sex?
I appreciate this will be the only time.
After we stop recording, one more time. But what are your thoughts?
Something similar. I think it's a great thing, but also a very personal thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it's particularly great of kind of spreading around of just. I just don't think it's great to have sex with tons of people. It's a very intimate thing that once you share it with everyone, it's no longer special. And when you lose the specialty of sex, then I think that's a tragedy when you lose that. And I don't know. That's my personal thought on it. But when we were talking about it, I was thinking about mainly your point on boundaries and children. And I think a big problem that kids used to have, and I guess still have, is where parents will set boundaries and then just not tell them why. A lot of it is, parents avoid the discussion of sex and then don't tell them about the birds and the bees, and hey, look at that, now they rebel. I think a lot of rebellion comes from avoiding where kids just are kept being told no because I said so, versus if the parent actually eventually, that's not something you tell the 5-year-old, but when they're a little older, you actually explain the boundaries on why you don't allow things, even if it's annoying for a parent to constantly answer these why. I think that's very important.
Yeah, and for adults too, adults need to also understand things are bad for them.
Yeah.
When it comes to the porn conversations, coming from a non-Christian point of view as well, of I just to give personal opinion out there of adults are going to do what adults are going to do. Porn is going to be filmed. There's no way to ban it, and also if two people want to, not going to stop you. Go at it. But as somebody who if somebody went and watched, so I think everybody listening right now could go 99% of people, at least 99% of guys, women do too. It's not just the guy.
Hey, we started ACOTAR, and I know it gets to the point. Not the first book. I have heard that book 5 is just straight up porn.
Oh.
It's literary porn. That's all it is.
Actually, one of your friends, wasn't it one of your friends saw their mom had 50 Shades of Grey?
It was the same friend.
No.
Okay.
What was that story? Bring us into this.
Looping it back to Harry Potter.
Yeah, loop us back.
I'm waiting for this.
My friend from elementary and middle school, and I was talking to him recently. We're catching back up again, but his mother did not allow him to watch Harry Potter. It was banned from him. He was allowed. There was a couple other different books and different shows that he'd come over to my place to watch or read, and something that disillusioned him from Christianity itself, and he became atheist, or at least agnostic, talking to him about it, was him at a younger age seeing that, oh, I'm not allowed to read Harry Potter, and then he saw that his mother on her nightstand was 50 Shades of Grey. And then just kind of going, wait, it's not okay to read Harry Potter, yet 50 Shades of Grey is on the table. What is this?
Right.
And there was just a kind of hypocrisy. And understand as like, hey, there's some things for adults, there's some things that are okay for children. They're not always the same. But for him, that hypocrisy kind of really disillusioned him from his mother's Christian ideals. And so that started him on a path where I think maybe a lot of Christians, when they, and I think not just Christians, parents, when they give a rule to their children, often it'd probably be a good thing to demonstrate what you actually have. So if you have a no screens at the dinner table rule, well, the parent shouldn't participate. They shouldn't do it either. Same thing with reading or porn or different books. I mean, whatever it may be, you should lead by example.
I don't know if the parents can be like, hey, don't have sex, but then not sleep with their spouse. I don't.
Well,
yeah,
that's different.
I don't know if parents can like follow 1-to-1 exactly.
Not 1-to-1, but
that would be a little odd. Like,
to be fair, I think even parents are like, hey, save sex for marriage. That's what they tell their kids.
Sure.
Like, well, there you go. It's like, hey, look at that, kids. Make sure you find yourself a spouse as soon as possible, and you get to have fun like the grown-ups.
Right, exactly.
But then there's a thing too. Oh, sorry, Thomas, go ahead.
Oh, it's all good. I just wanted to comment on your story. I think that was that is sadly relevant, I think, for a lot of people when they see their parents not adhering to the rules that they have set for them, and so it disillusions them either from Christianity or just their parents in general. And I think that sets a very clear precedent of like, okay, if you are going to set this rule, explain why. And you yourself hold yourself to that standard of, like, my parents, for example, they don't cuss because they don't believe in that. And so they would generally try to show us movies that didn't have a lot of harsh vulgarity in it because they knew how much we quoted things and they didn't want us to pick up on some of those words. And my parents really made a concerted effort to watch their language. And then to quote on what you were saying about sex and all of that, my grandfather has a very funny saying where he says, there's a reason they put doors on bedrooms. It's because not everyone is meant to see it. It is meant to be for the two people there in that situation. It's not meant for the rest of the world to come peering in all voyeuristic like. And so, yeah, to kind of comment on what you were saying of like, it's often misconstrued with Christianity that Christians are just anti-sex, that they won't even talk about it. But I mean, good grief, read Song of Solomon. The whole thing is a erotic love poem to his bride to be. And it gets into some pretty specific details about what he likes about his soon-to-be wife. Stuff that would probably shock you was in the Bible, but it's there. And if I'm going to accept the rest of it as God's word, I got to accept that as God's word too.
Man, I did not know this conversation was going to go Harry Potter right to porn. It's most
to
of
be
it.
fair,
Hard pivot.
you brought up the fan fiction earlier, and I think that's what that set us down. It put it in the back of our minds of like, oh, well, this is where this is headed now.
Yeah. I do, because we probably won't be talking about this again on an episode. I do want to make clear, like, for adults, I've struggled with porn addiction.
Yeah.
And getting over it was the hardest thing ever to do. And if you find yourself struggling with that, start to rationalize the bad things about it, it could be your views towards the opposite sex. Also, it could just be you could put yourself in depressive cycles of, I'm not good enough to have a real person, so I must seek out this. Think of every practical reason why it could be. You could look from a religious point of view, and Thomas, I'm sure you have a lot to say on this, and go, it's wrong, but it also helps if you can practically go how it's bad for your life and setting you up worse for future relationships or your current relationship you're in. You could have a bad if you have a partner and what. Anyways, it's different for people. At least my experience is that it was very bad and addictive.
Yes.
For other people, I know there's others out there that do it as an adult. I'm saying as an adult, I'm talking to adults here that use it in moderation and don't have the same issue I had or others do. But I do know, I think that's rarer than the alternative of where it is very addictive and is good to stay off, regardless of, hey, don't ban it from your other adult friends, but just know, maybe spread the word of here's your experience and be more comfortable talking about that with people. I think I know we're on the internet, this will be everywhere, who cares? Just have those conversations.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm pretty sure porn usage is actually one of the top reasons for divorce in like divorce discussions of like, I think the number one is money issues, but up there,
it's why
like,
we moved out of the house.
3,
we had split up houses because of the porn issue.
Because of the porn issue. But porn usage is one of the high reasons for divorce.
Is that really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think it's like number 2, but I think it's number 3 or 4.
I didn't know that.
It's definitely up there.
Wow.
Yeah. And you think about it practically. It's one of those interesting things of, because it is such a part of the culture that you kind of take it for granted, but think about it like what it actually is.
Right.
And it's really weird. It's a really weird thing to think about of what is the actual difference? What is the, practically speaking, what's the difference between watching porn and going into the bushes behind a motel and looking into the window of 2 people having sex?
Yeah. No,
Is it
I
any different?
would agree with that.
It's
not
weird.
Not really.
I don't think there's a
It's
practical
funny
difference.
because, like,
It's practically the same.
One, there's less social awkwardness because you're not there in person, but practically speaking,
It's the same. It's weird.
Yes. And yet one is illegal and the other isn't. So isn't that?
Yeah.
Well, I would think that comes down like the 2 people filming consented to it. The other people you're sneaking in on didn't really. But yeah. Besides the consent portion,
it's also just kind of, it's cuckery. It's a weird thing. It's like, oh yeah, no, I'm watching. Yeah. This, like, from a guy's brain, it's, hey, look, that pretty woman I find attractive. I'm gonna watch another guy have sex with a woman I find attractive. Like, that's real cuck-like behavior.
We're getting into it today.
You break it down, and it's not great. It's not a great thing. And hey, I struggle with the same thing. Still am. Like, I'm very much against, because I know the kind of grip that it still has on me, and so yeah.
And I appreciate you guys being so vulnerable on that, because I've wrestled with the exact same thing, especially in college. It was a real big struggle, and it's still a temptation because it is given such easy access nowadays. And one thing I'd like to mention also, the porn industry, if you actually look at the numbers, it makes more money than the NFL and the NBA combined. People don't really talk about that, but it is the single biggest money-making entertainment industry in America is the porn industry. I don't think people realize just how much of a grip it has on our culture and our society, even if it isn't talked about in public spaces usually. And I'm totally with you, Austin, of like, yeah, it's super addictive. And I forget the reference off the top of my head, but there's a verse in the Bible where it says you shouldn't expect to play with fire in your lap and then get shocked when you get burned. And that's exactly the way I view pornography, is like, yeah, maybe there's the one rare exception out there where they can watch it and it doesn't fiddle with them, but 99% of people who hold fire feel a burning sensation happening when they grab hold of it. And I think it's the exact same way of, why take the risk to begin with then, if it is that addictive and it is that destructive for your mental health, for your marriage, for the way you interact with the opposite sex? Why even take that risk then?
Yeah, it's so the long-term application, that's so easy. It's always that temptation. It's my precious, the ring. It's right there, and it's just getting over that very Christian message as well of temptation, and then and also to to cap on, we can go on from porn as well, but to cap on that Harry Potter conversation, when we kind of talked about this, because when we look at Harry Potter after saying all that, Harry Potter seems so ridiculous to ban. I mean, I don't know about you, but when we think like for children, we're talking about this in the spheres of children.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, I'm using that word ban incorrectly of like, hey, what parents restrict from their kids.
Yeah,
that's the better way of saying it, of what parents restrict from their kids. Up to each parent, you can decide what your kid is going to read or not, and to an extent, there is abuse to a certain point. Like if you literally box your kid in a room and don't let them do anything, obviously there is abuse at a certain point.
You go full Stephen King, then that's never good.
You just force them to read Stephen King novels. Is that what you mean?
That's all it is.
Oh no, funny enough, no, I was making a reference to Carrie was what, but then also forcing your kid to only read Stephen King, I think that could also count as abuse as well.
You want to talk about abuse? Carrie the musical. I was in that in high school.
You were?
My high school did a production of Carrie the musical.
How'd it go?
About as well as you think.
Did they have the whole blood? Obviously fake blood. They had that in everything?
Oh yeah.
And you did that in high school.
Oh, my high school is a little weird. They gave the theater department a little bit too long of a leash. We also did spam a lot.
Spam?
Like, what is the name? It's Monty Python. Search for the Holy Grail, but it's a musical version.
Oh, cool.
Great. But also for high school, very much lot of vulgarity and cussing. There's like the parents are there and it's like, it's okay. It's fine. It was actually a lot of fun, but the Carrie one was weird. I'll be honest. That one was a strange one.
And again, that kind of ties back into our broader conversation of like, look, we're not saying that some of these pieces of media you can never touch with a 10-foot pole, but it is kind of weird when you bring kids into the midst of that. It's like, okay, for someone who's 14 watching the movie Carrie or reading the book Carrie, like, good grief, what kind of message are they going to get from that? Like, what? How is that going to really, really screw with their head on their thoughts of what religion is and their thoughts on what high school is like and what the appropriate response to bullying is? Like, we could obviously go down that whole rabbit hole of Stephen King and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's kind of proof of the point of like, yeah, there are some things that you probably shouldn't watch as a kid, and that's okay. That's normal to affirm that.
This seems like it's a very modern problem. It's a modern spin on a very classic problem that all parents have had to deal with of restricting and protecting young children from things that could manipulate their mind of like, hey, I am going to teach my kid these things and I want them to get these lessons. And so I'm going to, hey, that person down the road, weirdo, creep, thinks some strange things. I'm not letting that person talk to my kid. Pretty easy to restrict and protect your kid for some time until they're old enough. With the internet, it seems like an impossible task to be able to actually restrict things from kids. Especially if you allow them the internet. Like if you give your kid a smartphone at a very young age and just let them have that and then go, oh, no Harry Potter. It's like,
okay. Okay, Martha.
It's like you're fixing the sink. You're fixing the leak while turning on the faucet.
Yeah. The internet just has everything and anything. And something I just thought of that I wanted to mention, we've been talking a lot about, children and making sure that children are not exposed to anything they shouldn't be. But to kind of flip it around a little bit, I think we as adults have lost the art of self-discipline. And what I mean is regulating ourselves in terms of recognizing if something is unhealthy for us. Because just to give kind of a funny example of that for me, I've never really been that big into horror. I know I just referenced Carrie, but that was just more of a reference. But I've never been that big into horror because it's always kind of freaked me out and it's always kind of messed with me a little bit. I remember I was watching gameplay footage of the video game Silent Hill 2. And that night, I had a nightmare in which Pyramid Head showed up. And I'm like, yeah, nope, never going to play that video game. I'm not going to do that. And I just bring that up to bring as a point, like, look, even as adults, I hate the fact that the term adult has been conflated with the extreme, like porn, The Boys, Game of Thrones, all that stuff is adult. It's like, no, being an adult means you have the freedom to consume what you want, yes. But that doesn't mean you necessarily should consume everything that is out there.
Oh no, we're getting definition of freedoms. Is freedom to do anything you want, or is freedom the ability to do things that are good for you? I don't know. You get into different ideas of what freedom actually is, because you could take it down the chaos route, or God-given freedom, which God did not give you freedom to cause chaos. God gave you freedom to pursue a good life. And, chaos is a part, but that's not really...
Thomas, we'll see you in the next several episodes.
We've been hitting on so many subjects.
I think the one big takeaway, Thomas, great point at the end there, and Rich, what you were saying was, as an adult, self-discipline, as you were saying, Thomas, of deciding what is actually good for you, and you could be a slave to an addiction, and it's not. When I say addiction, I mean it seriously. It's not easy to. It's not like, oh, done, get over it. It's that's not just being just be self-disciplined about it. It's not in that sense, but in the sense that the more you can be in control of your temptations, the better. The more self-disciplined you can be, and to actually know you are free. You are choosing to do this out of your own will. If free will exists, who determines free, we can get into that too. But with your own will, you decide to do something purposefully, the better it will be for you. Because, for example, we talked about porn this whole time, but another thing I know for me was gaming. Like, games can be in moderation. Gaming can be good for kids, can be good for adults. Like, there's all these certain subjects. But then if for your personality type, like I know for me, gaming, I just love games, certain games. I recently played Minecraft again and made it a point to go, I'm getting off at this time, to go like, can I do it? And I did it.
Right.
And it felt so damn good. It felt so good. And just, go ahead.
Thomas, I have to emphasize here, he's not kidding.
No, I'm not kidding.
I believe it.
I love
it's bad.
Minecraft.
His Minecraft addiction is an actual addiction. It's not, that's not a joke.
No.
It's
full stop.
It controls his life if he lets it.
Oh no. I have no right to judge because I definitely have video games I get really sucked into. I recently got back into Star Wars The Old Republic MMO game because I really liked that when I was a kid. Yeah, love it. And man, I have had to regulate myself because I've already got that thing in the back of my head of like, I gotta complete all 8 origin stories. Well, how long is that going to take? That's going to be over 100 hours easily. I was like, well, maybe not go that hard into it.
I believe in, I'm very optimistic about humans' moral compass in general, where take out the psychopaths, take out those people, but at night, when you reflect on your day and you go, do I regret anything from my day? Did I spend too long on this? Did I do too long on that? Usually it's a good barometer to go like, okay, don't repeat that. But then again, then you're confronted with the game and then you fall in the hedonism cycle and you do that and do that and do that, then regret it later. The shame always comes after. In the moment, your mind's always telling you this is good for you and you do it. Yep. But then the more you can kind of toy around with how you actually genuinely feel afterwards, being honest with yourself, not lying and coping. But then you look at the end of the day or end of the week and go, do I like how I spent my week? Do I feel purpose?
I mean, that's the advantage I think Christians really have, is being able to look at their actions and ask themselves, would God be proud of what I'm doing right now? That's a powerful tool to be able to guide yourself to the right path. or
Oh,
not really guide
definitely.
yourself, but like God guiding you on the right thing. And it's because it's God, the higher power. That's a lot easier to put your decisions in his hands rather than your own hedonistic mind. So like
Definitely.
for the not Christians out there, or the non-religious, I think the alternative that's not as good, it's the off-brand
For us plebes.
for us plebes,
we're
the
speaking to us.
off-brand version of that power
Yeah.
is asking, would your future self be proud of what you're doing? And thinking of like the future of like, hey, me 5 years from now, will I look back on this with pride, or not pride? Would I look at, because
With purpose. But what
would I be happy? Would I be happy that I did
Yeah.
this now, 5 years from now?
Mhm.
That's the discount, great value brand version of what God can do for you.
I 100% agree with that. The happy thing versus emphasize like happiness can also be hedonistic. Like, oh, I'm happy that I'm playing
Oh,
game.
yeah.
But the thing
more
is,
serious, like
happy
long term,
5 years from now.
Yeah, the key is long term happiness, right? Like you look back on it. So it's not like you don't mean the happiness of like, oh, my dopamine's going right now.
Yeah, no,
It's
because
the
that
serious
goes
happiness.
away
Yeah.
moments.
Oh,
But 5
instantly.
years from now, you look back going, hey, that thing that I did, that really, look at where that led me today.
I gotta say
Right.
too, like you know what? This episode has nothing to do with Harry Potter at this point. It's so Rich and I here on this first time with this new set. Thomas, we've somewhat like remember we introduced the set, then you, everything like that. So
Yes.
we are like Rich made this set. It's so cool. And just to reflect on when you look back at your journey and our booktube journey like that, something that we're genuinely happy with is going, look at something we built. Like literally you built
Yeah.
that behind
I built
us.
that.
Like built, but then
awesome.
technologically,
Put together and painted.
that's built. You did.
Put together and painted. I built the last bookshelf. That I built. This I put together.
Okay, fair enough.
Still, yeah.
Still, but then looking at, hey, you could tell with your hobbies or what you spend your free time with. Are you happy that you could keep measuring? Like, oh, did you grow something? One of the things we are happy with that we haven't plugged yet is our Patreon.
Oh yeah, we haven't plugged that yet.
But I genuinely mean this because something that we do find genuine joy in is we have our book club with our Patreon, and our members there have created a community of their own at this point. We review books every
Awesome.
month, but that's just part of it. But it's one of those things that we go like, oh, that's something that we really love that we did. And then we look at other things like the merch that you sold earlier in the video. First thing, to capstone it, to remind the people to buy the merch. The
Hat, sweatshirt. Remember, democracy is cringe. There is no
Teeter my totter is the go by Teeter my totter. But the fact that we have built something like that, it's small. They're small wins, but it's something, and we like it, and it's neat. And
It's something I'll be happy about 5 years from now.
it is when this channel's
Oh, yeah.
dust.
Yeah.
So Thomas, I kind of wanted to let you end with what is something in your life you were just happy you did in the past. Maybe it's day, year, something like that. And something about your channel, Thomas Writes. Plug your channel, do everything, capstone this conversation about Harry Potter and porn.
Sure. What a conversation. But you know what? We've lived up to the title to Ramble. So I think it is fully appropriate. In terms of my channel, I would say kind of what I am the most proud of is I did a book review of The Forever War. And if you haven't read it, highly recommend it. One of my absolute favorite military science fiction that is out there. And I had the distinct privilege of interviewing the author, Joe Haldeman, and his wife, Gay Haldeman. And we got into everything from his time serving in the Vietnam War to how that inspired his writing of that book. And that is something that I will always hold on to, is getting to talk with the author of one of my all-time favorite science fiction novels, and one that is so influential on the genre. That is an experience I will always hold near and dear to my heart, for sure. And I couldn't have done it if I had never started my channel. So I'm very proud of that.
That's amazing.
Fantastic.
Everyone go check out Thomas Writes. Rich, do you want to end us off with anything?
No, just gotta go check out his channel. It's great stuff, great guy. I look forward to seeing more of him.
Thomas, thank you so much for coming on, and we will see you all next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye bye all.